Hi, I am Victoria from Bright Horizons.
And I'm Jennifer from Bright Horizons. And today's topic that we're going to talk about is the different scholarship programs available for kids on IEPs in Ohio.
There are two scholarships available to kids. The first is the John Peterson Scholarship, and that can be used for any sort of disability of the 13 that would qualify for an IEP. Basically how that works is the amount of money awarded for that scholarship depends on the amount of money the district would receive for the certain different disability categories. So for a child with autism, they may receive a certain amount of money. That would be the amount of money for the scholarship, whereas it may be different for a child that qualified under OHI. And basically what that can be used for is any of the services and then tuition after that, after services would run out. The second scholarship available is the Autism Scholarship, and the difference is with that is that the child does have to have autism to qualify for that. And that can also only be used for services on the IEP, not tuition.
One thing to specifically know when you're going on this scholarship is that going on the scholarship means that you are giving up the right to free appropriate education. And what that means in English is that your local school district is no longer responsible for making sure that everything on the IEP is followed. You as a parent can choose whatever scholarship provider you want. And say, for example, your child's IEP has OT, PT, and speech. If your provider comes to you and says, well, I have OT and PT, but I don't have speech available, your school district is not required to provide those services instead. If your scholarship provider says that they have transportation available, that's great, but again, they're not required to under the scholarship program. They basically tell you what services they have and what they will charge for them, and that's how the scholarship works. Your school district still remains legally involved throughout the process. There are a lot of parents who go on scholarships because they're feeling frustrated and they're thinking, I will never have to deal with my local school district again. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily true because your local school district, even though they're not legally responsible for making sure that all the services on the IEP are provided, are still responsible for making sure that your child still has an IEP. So the school district will be sitting in every year on your child's IEP meeting and developing the IEP along with the provider of your choice, and the school district will be involved every 3 years when your child is evaluated to see if they're still eligible for an IEP. There have been occasions where school districts will make arrangements with parents to pay for costs over and above the scholarship. So that is not an unheard of practice, but it's not in any way something that a district is required to do. Another thing to know about the scholarship is, and oh man, we're gonna need to edit because I just lost my train of thought, but another thing to know about the scholarship is that if your child goes to a scholarship provider that is actually a school as opposed to, say, a daycare or a clinic or something like that, and the scholarship provider that your child goes to is within 30 minutes of where their school would normally be, then you can ask your public school district to provide transportation. But that's not an IEP rule, that's related to a rule with the Ohio Department of Education, which says if you choose to send your child to a private school or a charter school and the school is within X distance of where the child would normally go to school, you can apply to your school to provide transportation and or reimbursement for transportation. So there's a lot of people that think if the child's IEP says transportation, then the school district still has to do it on a scholarship, and the answer is not necessarily. A scholarship can be a really good choice for kids that could really benefit from a non-traditional sort of education. So we're not discouraging it in the least. We've had quite a few scholarship students that are acceptable, but if parents are going into a scholarship because they think it's a way to not have to deal with the public school district, or that they'll get absolutely all the services they need, we advise every parent to really approach that with caution and make sure that the scholarship provider you're selecting is really prepared to provide the services your child needs. You do have the option as a parent of getting more than one provider, but in all honesty, most scholarship providers will pretty much charge the entire amount of the scholarship for the services they're providing. It's not often that we see a parent in a situation, unless it's preschool and you're just trying to get services, where you might have money to go to one provider for OT and one provider for school. Usually they're going to bill for all those services and use the scholarship up in full. The other thing to know about giving up the right to a free appropriate public education is that you cannot apply for the scholarship and get it approved if you're still having a dispute with your school district about your child's evaluation or an IEP. The state will only approve the scholarship if everybody's agreed on that. And then if your child's already on the scholarship, the only thing really that you can file a complaint about is whether or not you think the scholarship funds are being billed and used appropriately by the provider. There really isn't a way to go back to your school district and say, my school district needs to be doing something over and above the scholarship. So your rights are more limited when you go on the scholarship program. So as we said, it's definitely a good thing for some kids, but we advise approaching going on a scholarship provider search with caution, and working with an advocate and asking parents that have used the providers before a lot of questions.